5, I'm delighted to be joined by world-class tennis coach on the ATP and WTA tours and performance coach at Soto Tennis Academy in Spain, Mike Digby. Mike is an experienced hitting partner and works with elite tennis players including Roger Federer, and recently warmed up Ons Jabeur at the Wimbledon Centre Court before the 2023 singles final. Tune in as we discuss all things performance, tennis coaching and so much more. I hope you enjoy. Okay, hi Mike, thanks a million for joining me on the podcast.
Hey, how you doing? How's it going?
Pretty good here. Give us a bit of an intro about yourself for the listeners who might not know who you are. I know you're currently living in sunny Spain.
So I'm a current performance tennis coach. I'm based out in Spain at Soto Tennis Academy. I guess for the last 26 years of my life, I've dedicated my craft to trying to be the best that I can at what I was playing, and now I'm coaching. So.
Okay, I'm always interested with coaches what their playing experience is. I know you're in the States for a couple of years on scholarship, but what was your path to getting over there?
Yeah, so I actually was a little bit of a latecomer to the game. I always played since I was 4, 5, 6 years old, but more from a recreational standpoint. I think a lot of players actually start competing when they're about 8 or 9 now, so it's it's very, very young. And I probably didn't start competing properly till I was maybe 12, 13, which to some people might still be very young, but it's getting younger and younger year on each time with how players are competing. So I didn't start till I was 12, 13, and even then I probably wasn't really playing as much as others of my age so, but when I hit about 14, 15, I think I started to kind of realize, I'm actually quite good. I can play a little bit, and I think I've got a bit of a sporty background. My dad played badminton to a good level. My mum played tennis to a good level. My granddad, played football. So I think I pick up things quite quickly. And then kind of when I hit probably 16, 17, I thought, well, look, I am doing much better, and I'm starting to maybe be able to compete with some of the better players in the country, but I'm still a latecomer. So at the time, and obviously it's booming now, college tennis was kind of the best option for me. I was never ready to play professionally at all at that age. And I decided to take the route down college tennis and go to the States for 4 years. And then when I was in the States, I was very lucky. I actually, I think in my sophomore year, so my second year, I picked up a little bit of an injury at the back end of the season. And it means I went home, and I was meant to be competing they have this thing in tennis called the German League, which basically it's a money league where you can go over to Germany and play for a team. And it's a really good way of being able to play matches, money, and it's quite popular with college tennis players. So I was meant to be doing that, but because I was injured, I couldn't. And my coach back home in the UK that had been coaching me since I was probably 11 or 12 said, look, there's been an opportunity opening to be a hitting partner at Wimbledon. And I thought, cool, amazing. I went to Wimbledon as a kid, absolutely loved it, and didn't really know too much about it, but thought, yeah, cool, I'll throw myself in the deep end. And that's kind of how it all started, really. And also, I guess, how my playing career probably ended as well.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting, because I would have interviewed, there's a good few Irish basketball players in the States on scholarships, and it's interesting interviewing them about basketball and the collegiate level over there. It's very intense, there's huge training with it. I'm assuming it's the same with tennis. When you, apart from having that opportunity, like that once in a lifetime thing to be a hitting partner at Wimbledon, did the States kind of turn you off playing? Was it okay, when people go over there, a lot of Americans don't play after college, they realise, okay, I'm ready to retire. Would that have been the case anyway, or was it more the opportunity that led you down this route, do you think?
It's a great question, because it's hard to know. I think in my mind, when I went over there and while I was over there, I always wanted to try and play. I always knew I was later coming into the game, but I also thought that gave me a bit of an advantage. I was still fresh. I hadn't been competing for 10 years, since I was 8. I'd been competing for maybe 5 or 6. So I think I always felt like I tried to flip the narrative on its head, and it gave, tried to give me a bit more of an edge. I was fresh. I was, But that being said, I also know, and I started to develop some knowledge at that time of how tough this sport can be. And I think when an opportunity like that comes up when you're young, as in the hitting partner bits at Wimbledon, whether I was going to play or not, I would have never turned that down. Looking back, and sometimes I, think, oh, should I have kind of just left it and done it later on, or should I have carried on playing, or whatever it was. But at the time, I was still in college and I was still competing. It was just for me a great way to experience something so different, and also, to practice with the best players in the world. Like, if I take it from a selfish standpoint, I still wanted to play at that time, and why would I not go down the route of being able to practice with the likes of Djokovic and John Isner and all of these players? So I think, yeah, did it stop me from playing? Maybe, I'm not sure, but I think it just led me down another path, which I'm very grateful for happening, because I think it's opened up so many opportunities, and I think I've definitely found my niche.
What was that experience like the first time going to Wimbledon? Was it eyes wide open, this is amazing? Was it kind of a reality check going against these guys, or what did you think?
I think, yeah, it was a little bit of both. I think I was so consumed with the experience. I think I was probably a little bit naive to everything, which, looking back now, is a really good thing. I think sometimes in those situations, not thinking that much and just doing it, I think actually allowed me to just kind of take everything in. I think, in fact, it's funny. I think I don't want to say I'm not a hitting partner anymore. I don't really do that too much anymore. I've kind of dived more into it's naturally led me into the coaching and coaching at that level. But I think the more recent years I've done it, the harder I've actually found it, just purely because kind of how everything works. And sometimes when you're switched on to those things, it can increase the nerves a little bit. I think it's a little bit like, like a baby walking for the first time. They just do it. They don't thinking about it. It's just happening, and I think it was, yeah, I always felt like it was easier that way. But that being said, when you step on the court with, like I say, the likes of Naomi Osaka, who I was hitting with, John Isner, Djokovic, all these types of players, you then get that reality check of, whoa, like this is it. This is amazing. But it was funny. I never felt like when we were practicing, I was off the level at all. I always felt pretty comfortable. And I think, don't get me wrong, I had some not so great experiences with it, which I'm sure we'll come on to later in the podcast. But yeah, it was always, I never felt like I was out of place, which I think, because that was the case in the start, that definitely, I grew with confidence as it went on.
And did you know straight away then, you went back to college, did another few years, coming straight out of college, did you go straight into becoming a hitting partner kind of full time, or?
Yeah, so I think that opened up quite a lot of opportunities, as I'm sure you can imagine. I think I always said to myself, regardless of the offers that I got after that Wimbledon to be more of a hitting partner at other tournaments and for other players, I always said to myself that, no, I want to finish my time at college. I think I wanted to honor that. And I think I'm glad I did, because it's so important that I, finish that, because I learned so much about myself after those experiences, going back into the college system, focusing more on myself, having to be able to play, focusing on the team. And then after college, I think things just came up. I was very much in a case of, let's just see what happens kind of thing. I was happy trying to play a little bit. I was also more than happy at that time. I think if, offers are coming up for me to be hitting partners at big tournaments with certain players, and I want to take them, because I think it's an experience that I really enjoyed at Wimbledon a few years ago. So I think, yeah, and I think then it just kind of happened. And I think when you're around that level and you realize what it takes, it naturally gives you a bit of a reality check of where you're at and your game. And don't get me wrong, I think I could have done pretty well if I played, the lower end of professional tennis, but I think it made me realize that I was probably never really at the level to be able to compete longer term at the high end of the game. It's just too tough. So for me personally, there's many players that I'm sure are in my shoes that are still playing now, and I have massive respect for them. And I think it gives you so much more opportunities than just playing tennis. So yeah.
How do you get business as a hitting coach or a hitting partner? Is that through agencies? Is it through the actual events themselves? What way does that work?
Yeah, it's honestly just networking connections. I think when you're at those bigger tournaments, and I know this sounds a bit cliche, but if you're a likable person and if you're humble and you get along with people, I think when they're at that level, as long as you can play well, if we go down the hitting partner route, um, they latch on to that players. They're traveling for 30, 40 weeks a year and they're spending so much time with their team, often more time with their team than their family. You have to have a personality that they get along with and that they enjoy being around. So I think just the networking element and the being in those big events just naturally brings up opportunities, and then it's just all about selling yourself. And I think there's many people that would love to be in that position, and sometimes again you've got to switch that off and go, right, okay, it's fine. Like this is where I'm at. I'm sure there's a lot of people that would love to be able to do what I do, but I've got to just stay humble and just let things happen. And I think it's like any self-employed work, word of mouth is just huge. And I think especially in that world, I think if a few players enjoy having you around and like your input, then they'll spread that to other players who will spread that to agents, who will spread that to coaches. And then all of a sudden, you've got yourself in a position where you're well respected. So
I'm always fascinated by an athlete's preparation in any sport they have, but when you're preparing to be a hitting partner, is that different preparation to what you would be playing? Do you how do you prepare if you're going to be, if let's say you take me for example, you're going to be hitting with me, how would you prepare to come hitting with me? I wouldn't be obviously the usual person or whatever.
yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, ultimately I'm playing. So my first and foremost, when I was a hitter and I was still playing, I would prepare just like I would prepare to practice myself. Usual warm ups, making sure that I've got everything that I need, kind of thing. I guess the only difference is that when I step on the court, it's not about me in that sense. It's about what I need to do to help the player. And I think a lot of that involves chatting with the coaches and understanding what they want out of the practice for their player. And then I was very lucky that it got to a point I built up some really good relationship with some players that they would sometimes want feedback from me direct as to how the ball is coming off their strings and impacting me. Because I think almost in those certain situations, not all the time, but sometimes, my feedback can be more valuable than the coaches because I'm the one that's actually practicing with them, so I can feel everything. Um, and I think when you build up relationships with people, with the players, sorry, that's also something that they're looking for. They're looking for the feedback of like, what do you think? How does it feel when I put you in this position? What are you struggling with? What do you like? Um, so a lot of it actually within the preparation is when you're on the court, you're constantly, chatting to the coaches, chatting to the players as to how they're feeling, and just making them feel like, you know, that my feedback is valuable. And I think that's something that I try to do quite early on, because I think that it almost sets you apart a little bit from other people, because I think then you're not just hitting with them, you're also very subtly giving some feedback as well. Um, but yeah, in regards to the preparation, it's very, I mean, there was a period where if I was with a player consistently for a week, 10 days, then you'd look at their opponents, and when you're at that level, like if I'm with Federer and he's playing Nadal, I don't really need to. I know how Nadal's going to play. I don't need to suddenly look up someone's name on YouTube and go, right, who's Rafa Nadal? Like, how does he play? So you get an idea before going into the practice, probably what they're going to ask of you. And yeah, so obviously at that level, it becomes a little bit easier to know what they're going to expect.
I'll never forget the clip of, there's so many clips of Federer, but I'll never forget the clip where he challenges the umpire and says, no, that's impossible because of the spin of the ball. And when they reviewed it on the video, he was right, because it was the spin. He was saying that the spin was, it was an incorrect call because the spin wouldn't have allowed it to bounce or something like that. Can you give us a bit of a story about him that we might not have heard of? I'm looking for exclusive really here, Mike. So pressure's on to give me something juicy here about
Oh,
Federer.
oh wow. Exclusive. Put me under pressure. I'm not sure. I'm sure something might come to mind in a little bit, but I think the one thing that I found with him, and I think some people will already know this, some people won't, but he almost doesn't care about himself. He cares more about who he's with. So like I remember the first time we practiced together. It was actually at Queen's Club. So it was at the ATP Finals in 2019, which is based in London at the O2 Arena. Now, if anyone knows London well, Queen's Club, where they hold an event pre-Wimbledon, is on the other side of London to the O2 Arena. So to get there is a nightmare. Like it's an absolute nightmare. It takes it took me on multiple occasions an hour and a half just to travel over the other side of London for the traffic and everything. He just likes to practice well away from the arena because obviously it's Roger Federer. He just wants his own space. And I remember getting there and in my head when he walks on the court and we have a drinks break, I'm like, I just want to ask him questions. I've heard he's such a great guy and I always want to ask him all these questions. Childhood like idol and everything. I couldn't get a word in edgeways. I couldn't ask him anything because all he wanted to do was ask me questions. Where are you from? What football team do you support? Do you have any brothers and sisters? Do you play any other sports? Just, and I'm thinking to myself, like, it's the most surreal thing that someone of that level, not just in tennis, but in world sport, actually doesn't really want me to chat to him. He just wants to know more about me because I think it just summed him up. And I think that it's not very much of an exclusive, but I think he's so humble and so loving that I think it's why so many people adore him and always will. They always will. I mean, I always remember him even at Wimbledon this year when he sat in the box. I can't remember for what match he was watching. It might have been opening of centre court, the first round, but I remember not being on centre court, but being in the players' lounge and just hearing centre court erupt. And I'm thinking, oh, it must be Djokovic walking out onto centre court or whoever. And it wasn't. I looked back that evening on TV and it was actually Roger just getting a standing ovation for minutes. And I think, yeah, like there's something about him that I think he transcends sport in so many ways. And I think just being able to, have him ask me a load of questions was quite a surreal moment, I think.
Wow. Yeah, that clip is brilliant. And it's funny when I was only joking with exclusives, so don't worry, but it was more like that story is like, I was looking for something that just encapsulate character away from ability. And I think that story does that. And you can always tell with athletes, who's a genuine guy and who isn't. And to hear that and kind of, I would have always such a genuine guy, to hear that is incredible because you would never, of someone of that stature to just have so much interest in the hitting partner. Like it's always the small details. Out of interest, what kind of questions were you hoping to ask him, and did you ever get the chance to ask him?
No, I did eventually. I did. Just as usual. Just there's certain matches that I, as a kid that I watched the 2008 Wimbledon final, even the 2009 one when he played Andy Roddick. I'm sure it was the final. I'm probably getting that wrong now. But just questions about that, like how is he feeling? How does he deal with those moments? Like, what is it like to ultimately not have loads of privacy, and I think the one question that always I remember that I do remember asking him, but I now can't remember what he said, was just like what makes him so different, what puts him apart from everyone else, other than the fact that he's unbelievably gifted. He's so talented in so many ways, and no one I think can argue with that. He's just incredibly talented. And I remember him saying something along the lines of like, I've never known that I've had talent. Like I don't see it as talent. I just play. And it sounds so simple, doesn't it? I just play. But I think there's so much within that answer that I took in a sense of, he just plays the sport. He just plays tennis. He said, I can't remember how old he was at the time, probably late 30s when I spent a bit of time with him. But he said, I still feel like I'm 8 years old, just doing what I love. And I think he said something like, apart from my bones are starting to hurt a little bit more now, kind of thing. And I think it's just, that is why all these players still play. Like, Andy Murray, Djokovic, like, okay, yes, Djokovic is phenomenal. His body's holding up so well for someone that's now probably coming more to the end of his career. that they just play because they love the sport, and it's this obsession with trying to be better, just always be better, and just this obsession with, the feelings that tennis gives them, the highs and the lows. I think, I can't tell you how much it would have hurt Djokovic to lose that Wimbledon final to Alcaraz. It would have killed him. It would have just absolutely and this guy's won 20 odd Grand Slams, arguably the best player that's ever played the sport. Got a beautiful family. Money probably isn't really too much of an issue to him anymore. Yet it would have still really, really hurt him. And I think that kind of summed that up when he then played him again in like a 4-hour match in Cincinnati just before the US Open. And he's there again doing the same thing, just like putting everything on the line as a 36, 37-year-old who's coming to the end of his career against a young Spanish guy that is so hungry. Djokovic, Federer, Nadal, Murray's, all of these players, they love that feeling. And I think those are the feelings which I think a lot of the public can and can't relate to at the same time. They can in a sense of it's just so admirable, and they kind of are in awe of it, because I think a lot of people probably are like, oh, it's just incredible. So
is that, when you look across the players just named and anyone at that level, is that what separates the great players from the rest of the pack? Is it the obsession, the love for the game, that kind of fight, desire to really just win? Is that the kind of the three things you see as the pattern, or are there any other similar characteristics?
Yeah, I think they would definitely be up there. I think, they've got something. I often can't describe it. I say this to a lot of people. They've just got something a little bit different. And that's probably like a terrible answer for a podcast, because you're probably looking for so much more information than that. But I think, there's something. They've just got something
it's
a little
intangible.
bit different. Yeah, exactly. And this I don't. One thing I don't want to do, because I'm very lucky to coach at that level now, is I don't want that to be disrespectful to all the other players that play, because I cannot tell you how hard every single player, professional tennis player, works. Anyone that is playing at Grand Slam level has, done something very special to be able to be in and around that scene, and works incredibly hard and dedicates their life to their sport. And I really, truly believe that. And I think, but they have something just a little bit different in the moments where they really need to. They can find an extra gear and just find something that maybe some players struggle to a little bit more. And for me, it's the consistency. I think that's the one thing. I think, we can all, say we can all, everyone can go and win an incredible match and be remembered for that. But can you be remembered for doing that day in, day out for 16 to 20 years, at the highest level in some of the hardest conditions? And I think that's what separates the likes of Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, Serena Williams, especially. That's what separates those types of players from maybe their competitors.
And it brings up this kind of, I'd nearly ask every coach, but when you get to, like, we're talking about the 1% of the 1%, are players at that level born with ability? Do they develop it? It's always it's like this age-old argument of, are great players born or made? Mike, I'm putting you on the spot here with all these questions.
I actually, when you sent me over some questions, I saw that one and I laughed, because I don't think, if I'm being honest, I don't think players are born that way. I think they're the product of their environment. I don't get me wrong. I think there's some players that have some natural gifts from a physical standpoint, especially. I think Alcaraz at 16 years old was almost like a mini professional already. But I think a lot of it is the environment that they're put in, and how they're allowed to grow, and how they can almost develop their beliefs. Now, Alcaraz has been around Juan Carlos Ferrero since a very, very young age, who is a great tennis player, one of the best in the world in his generation, and was incredible when he played. So to have someone like that around him from a young age would have allowed, you know, Federer to kind of construct his beliefs and allow him to nurture him in a way that will hopefully give him the best possible chance to be, you know, a great player, which he already is. You know, he already won 2 Grand Slams, and I think so. I don't think you're born great, but I think that there's certain things that within the environment that you're put in from a young age, which allows you to be great. And I don't just think that's from athletes. I think that's from anyone that's looking to achieve high performance in their industry, coaches, business people, whatever that might be. I think you are the product of your environment. I quite strongly believe that. I think, yeah, the environment that you're put in your life will often dictate maybe how you view the world and how you can make changes to what you believe in.
Very interesting. I wanted to ask you as well, kind of the biggest misconception of elite sports people. It doesn't have to be specifically tennis players, or kind of the reality, like you mentioned there, the grind that goes in away from the lights. You know, I'm fascinated by what goes in away from the TV cameras that we don't see as fans, that, you know, we're only, all we see is the big performances, you know, the big wins on the big days, but we don't see the hours and hours and thousands of hours going in behind the scenes. What's the reality, or kind of the biggest misconception about elite athletes from your perspective?
I think it's sometimes mentioned, but not mentioned enough. They're human beings. They're the exact same as you or I. You know, they have feelings. They feel the same things. If you think that, I'm currently part of Tamara Zidansek's team. She's been as high as 22 in the world, semi-finals of the French Open. And if you think for any 1 second that when she's in the back end of a match and it's really tight and there's loads of people watching, you think she's not nervous, you're deluded. She's feeling the exact same things that you or I would feel if we were in that position at any level. You know, they have feelings. They don't always enjoy the traveling part of it. They love spending time at home. They want to have a family. Yeah, they're just normal people. And I think the one thing that they have that is just different to you or I is that their job is just a little bit different. They're just exceptionally good at their job, and it's different to, you know, working a 9 to 5 or, you know, whatever that might be. And that's not taking anything away from that. Everyone has their own ambitions and goals in life. Theirs just happens to be a little bit weird in that sense. It's just, you know, athletes are like that. They're very switched on and they're incredibly obsessive with certain things, but they are just normal human beings that are just looking to achieve a dream that they've set out to achieve since a very young age. And I think that sometimes is overlooked. And I think because it's overlooked, we can sometimes put them on pedestals where they don't want to be on pedestals. You know, they want to just be treated as everyone else, but they also understand that that's just not the case. You know, they understand that. But I think, yeah, the biggest misconception is the fact that they are just human beings that are looking to do their job and achieve great things.
The next time I interview a professional athlete, I'll just say, we're the same. You just have a weird job. see what they tell me.
Me saying a weird job probably is, I probably shouldn't have said that. But they just, you know, they just do something that I think a lot of people from a young age, you know, dream of doing, but they've turned that dream into a reality. But they started out just like you or I at school, like wanting to dream big, wanting to win Wimbledon, wanting to win a World Cup. They just so happen to be in a position where they've maybe got a little bit of a better chance to do it than you or I. And I think, yeah, I'm very privileged and lucky to be able to help someone and hopefully continue to help someone in my career to do that.
Mm-hmm. It's actually interesting you say, well, your answer is they're human. I had Drew Hanlon on, who was an NBA skills coach, and he's employed by, you know, the best of the best in the NBA, and he said the exact same. I said, Drew, what's the biggest misconception? He was like, they're all humans. You know, I'm talking to the guys after practice, they're worried about this or that. Like, he obviously didn't get into it, but it just reminds you that at the end of the day, as you said, we're all the same. When you get to that level, and when we're talking about nerves and kind of that mental aspect of the game, at the elite level, is competing more mental or a physical challenge? What do you think?
Oh, it's a good question. I'm gonna almost like twist it a bit and say that it's a bit of everything. And I know that's maybe not the answer that we wanted, but I think I don't think you can be at that level and almost go, oh, it's all mental, it's all physical, it's all tactical, it's all technical. Because I think when you get to that level, you have to rely on multiple different skill sets for different situations. And I think, I always say tennis is a little bit like chess. Like, you're trying to find one move ahead, and that might require a physical task. There might be a physical task. You might have to kind of say, right, for the next 5 minutes, the body's going to hurt here. That might require a mental task, the awareness of how the opponent's feeling and the awareness of how you're feeling. It might mean that I've got to execute a tactic. So I've got to be able to do something from a tactical standpoint, which will then naturally influence my technique, because your technique will influence the tactic you're looking to do. So I think, again, we go back to misconceptions. I think a lot of people, and we'll take tennis, view tennis players as these freakish, skillful athletes that are just, oh my God. Whereas actually they're having to pick what type of attribute they're using in every single scenario. And it's not always a skillful one. It's not always a mental one, because I'm telling you, mentally, sometimes when they're on court, they feel shocking. They feel terrible. So they've got to rely on other things, And I think, if I'm playing against Djokovic and I'm feeling terrible and my head's down, then my mental skill set is probably not being utilized right now. So I've got to try and find ways to utilize other things so I keep my head afloat and I can still compete. So look, I do believe that your mentality has a massive influence on how you conduct yourself and on how you ultimately get through matches and win at that level. But I also believe that there's multiple other skill sets that have to be utilized in order to be great at what you do. I hope that makes sense.
No, it does. And do you know what I love about this question is it there's not a right answer.
Yeah.
Everyone is different. Everyone has their own approach. Like, if I asked the top 10 tennis players, everyone would probably have a different answer about what and it's just fascinating to hear the different approaches, and sometimes it resonates with people, and you can think of scenarios in any sport that you're thinking of where it's more physical or more tactical or this piece of magic. And I love what you said there about chess, or about tennis being a game of chess. You're thinking one move ahead. It's just this other element of the game of sport that you don't think of, is that kind of logical piece as well as tactical, of kind of keep it on track. It sounds exhausting, I have to say, trying to keep up with all those things.
Yeah, I think tennis challenges your present moment thinking big time, but I do think that you have to almost kind of think, right, I'm in this situation right now. Where do I want to get to? When I'll kind of use it as checkpoints. I think one of the best bits of advice that I can often give players that are maybe struggling within a session or within a match, on the WTA tour, you can coach now a little bit. And I'll always say, win the next 2 minutes. And I don't mean that from an actual, right, you've got to win more points than your opponent. I mean, in the sense of find yourself in a better position in 2 minutes' time than you were 2 minutes before. And I think if you can win the next 2 minutes for the next 3 hours, you'll win the match. And it's those small increments as you go along. And I think often tennis, and this isn't just tennis players, it's athletes in general, when they see sometimes there's problems and they're this and that their mind always goes to the bigger picture. Oh, I've lost the match now. Oh, I'm out of the tournament. As opposed to going, okay, you could be if you keep thinking like that. But if you win the next 2 minutes and you do that for the next 2 or 3 hours, all of a sudden you'll get yourself in a position where you're probably more likely giving the best possible chance to win the match. So it is like a game of chess, and you've got to challenge yourself in the present moment thinking, but you also have to try and find yourself in a position where you can see what you're looking to do down the line as well.
That reminds me of a story of an elite player in Ireland. We don't know, it's not professional, but it's amateur Gaelic football, and what his name is Tom Parsons, and what he did was he had a watch on. Now, there'd be a big screen with a timer, but he used to have his watch under his glove or something, and he'd say, right, I'm going to win the next 5 minutes, and he'd just do that for the 60 minutes. And that story just brought me back to that. I read it about 2 years ago, and it just, again, as you say, you're present, but you're not present because you think of the next step. But that just kind of grounds an athlete more so than probably thinking of this, oh my God, I have to try get over through the next few hours and win the whole thing.
100%.
I'm interested in confidence and developing confidence, and there was a great quote I had from an Irish sports psychologist. His name is Kevin McManaman, and he said, it was a great quote on a webinar. He said, "We're so afraid to be cocky, we refuse to be confident." And it's come up a lot of times within coaching or listening to athletes, particularly. I think Irish people are terrible. We never, we have such a bad mentality. We never give ourselves credit. I'm sure it's the same in other places, but how do you balance having confidence, getting a player confident in their ability, but they're still humble enough and they're not arrogant that they ignore teaching or avoid learning?
It's a great question. I try and, before I answer this, I try and separate belief and confidence, because I think they're two very different things. I think belief is that deep-rooted feeling that you have inside you, that you know deep down what you're looking to do, how you're going to achieve it, and you're going to really want to try and achieve greatness. I then think confidence fluctuates in and out of your game all the time. If we take a tennis player, it's like you're going to wake up some mornings and you're going to feel great. You're going to feel confident. Wow, feel great, like awesome. Then you're going to wake up some mornings and it could be 2 days later. God, a bit tired today. So that fluctuates all the time. And I think that's your confidence levels. That can increase if you start to play well at the start of a tournament. That can kind of increase and boom. But then in tennis, the next week, if you lose first round, all of a sudden your confidence might dip. But your belief system is what will keep you going over a number of years, over a number of months, over a number of weeks. So I think for me, I try and develop the belief system more than I do confidence, because I think if you have a strong belief system, and that happens over time, naturally your confidence might start to shift, and you might start to, start to believe in what you're looking to do day to day a little bit more. In regards to I like it when tennis players show a little bit of arrogance. Personally, I think you have to have that. I think it's such a dog-eat-dog mentality out there, especially because it's an individual sport. But I think it's understanding the personality first. I think that's the number one thing. Understand the person first is one of my biggest philosophies as a coach. Because if I can understand the person, I'll know when I have mini windows to coach, and I know that they'll be receiving that information. I think it's a misconception that if you've got a 2-hour tennis session, I'm going to be coaching full on for 2 hours. I think players will want to just kick me off the court. They'll go absolutely mental. But I know that I'm going to maybe have 3 or 4 windows within those 2 hours where I can really harness what I'm looking to deliver. And I know they're going to be really listening. And this can fluctuate between personality types. I might have someone that actually wants a load of information for the first 30 minutes of the session. So then the next hour and a half, they can try and put that into play, and I can just kind of tap in here and there. Whereas I might have someone that only wants me to talk and so look, I think it's understanding the athlete and the person first. That can then, you can harness then, how that works. Because there's some people, I used to coach a very good player, good junior player, that would almost work hard if I told them they couldn't do something. So I'd be like, there's no way you're going to do that. I'd start a session, 0 chance you complete this task, this session. That motivates them. And then they're like, that confident, arrogant side comes out of, I'm going to show you, I'm going to show you I can do it. Whereas there's some people that I need to give a lot more encouragement. Look, you're great at this. Come on, let's keep working. And that then gives them that arrogant, confident side. And you see them kind of walking around. So yeah, I think it's just about trying to understand different personality types and understanding, what makes them tick a little bit more.
Okay, I have 2 questions from what you said there, but the bit about getting to know the players, again, just reminds me of another, coaching is so universal, but hurling, it's basically the other version of the amateur sport, Gaelic football. And obviously the team sport's a bit different, but there's a great clip, it's halftime and the manager is going around his team. And his individual approach to every player is different. Some players he's having a quiet word in the ear, the other he has the arm around the shoulder, the other ones he smacks in the back of the helmet, he's grabbing them by the jersey, getting them ready. And how do you get in under their skin and get to know a personality when, let's say, I start working with you? How do you go through those steps to figure out the windows that you can kind of tick me over with?
Yeah, it's a great question. So with most people, I'll when if we chat, so let's say you wanted to work with me and we're setting some, goals, whatever, I'd almost put all of that to one side and go, right, what's your mum's name? What does your mum like? How's your dad? Have you got any brothers or sisters? Which football team do you support? So I like humanize the conversation, because I think what every athlete will do is every athlete at some point in their career would have had a bad experience with a coach. So they always will have a guard that is an invisible, that ultimately as a coach, I've got to try and bring down to allow them to let me in. So I'll always try and humanize the conversation first and just have a chat. Like, who are you? Because ultimately I'm going to be spending so much time with the person as well as the athlete. I want to know the person first. And what I've found is, if I have those types of conversations, sometimes it works immediately. Sometimes it takes me a little while for them to be more receptive to those types of conversations. If I have those types of conversations, it then allows me to get into their personality and kind of go, right, how does this person work? How am I going to get them to perform at the highest possible level and improve and develop? I often find sharing like a difficult moment in my life also really helps, because again, it kind of shows that I can show vulnerability. I'm not this like coach that's gonna, sunglasses on, hat on, act all tough all the time, because it's just not how we are. I'm a human as well. Like and that often will then open up them, right? Like, actually, you know what? I've been struggling, or I had a really tough period with this. And then I'll tell them something that I'm really proud of. I've done this and I'm really happy, So then you're then sharing human emotion. So then all of a sudden they feel like that you're there for the person as well as the tennis player. So I think that for me massively, massively helps. Yeah, like develop a relationship first, because it's like anything. If I'm wanting to coach you and you want me to, you want to work with me. If if I if I come in and I almost go, right, you're doing this, 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 and this, and you'll win a tournament. You're like, well, what? What do you mean? Like, you don't even know a name. Like, so it's one of those. You've got to develop that trust and that relationship before you're going to take on board anything that I say. Yeah, and that then maybe changes a little bit if you've got a really good track record. Then the person might just go, right, just what do you know? But even then, like, you've got to still build that some form of trust in a relationship in order for things to work out in a relationship, in a coaching relationship.
Mm. What you're saying there reminds me of Roger Federer asking you all those questions.
Yeah.
And it's funny, isn't it? Like, what he was probably doing, like, he was obviously being, I'm not saying he wasn't being really nice, he obviously was, but he was also developing or getting to know you and developing a trust with you. He was like, can I trust Mike? Do I know him? It's funny.
Yeah, but it's funny, isn't it, how not once he asked, how good's your backhand, how good's your forehand, how good you serve, how do you move? Like, it's it's not about that, because ultimately, if you make me feel comfortable and you make me feel like I can trust you and I'm, then all of a sudden my level gets better. And I haven't even, and that's how it often works, is I haven't even spoken about a forehand or a backhand with some of the players that I've worked with, but I've made them feel like they can trust me. And then once you get that, that's when it's my job to then basically, with my coaching expertise, to go, right, what do I see from a technical, tactical, physical, and mental standpoint? And how can I develop this person and this player to then reach the goals that they want to try and achieve?
The other question I had from that was about your belief versus confidence. Really like that, because it comes across as what I'm understanding from what you're saying is confidence is fleeting, belief is rock. It's the rock solid. What techniques do you use to develop that belief in a player? Is there anything in particular you find helpful or good?
It's a great question. I do think, again, it goes back to like understanding personality, and understanding what are they like in the most stressful moments in a tennis match. What is their like stressor? Some people, if they get really stressed and nervous, they'll hit harder. Some people will hit softer. Some people will get the head down. Some people will relish those moments. So I think for me, it's just trying to figure out again, like, how am I going to be able to coach the person before the player? Again, it's a terrible answer for a podcast, but it is a little bit of a feel thing. we always, as coaches, as players, in tennis especially, we always talk about feel. How's this feel? Like, how, So I think, yeah, I'm actually, I'll be honest, as a younger coach, I'm still figuring those things out. Like, I think you don't really, I believe anyway, start developing really strong philosophies until you've probably coached for 10 years or so. And you're like, you know what? And I think I'm still, in my head, I've probably got a good idea. And when I'm really strong on those, we can do another podcast and I can give you some really, really good information on that. But I think I'm still trying to figure out in my head what works, what doesn't with those types of conversations, because I've had many that just haven't worked and many that have. So I do believe currently that it is a little bit of a feel thing, and I just have to kind of guide them through that. But there's certain things, certain traits that maybe a player would show that for me goes, right, okay, maybe they don't really believe, or maybe they are just having a bit of a bad spell. And I think any good coach will tell you that once you've then identified that, it's then trying to find unique ways, which is going to help the individual, to then increase the belief system. I don't try and make a player more confident, because like I said, it fluctuates. It's so different. Like Djokovic, everyone thinks, he's always confident. He's not. I can tell you that right now. He's not confident at all. But what gets him through is his ability to believe in what he's doing. And I think a lot of belief comes from, sounds obviously really obvious, but if I suddenly make someone's forehand 3-4 times better, it's going to naturally increase the belief system. If they get more information on how to deal with uncomfortable thoughts and feelings, and they put that into practice and they see it works, that's going to increase the belief system. So I think, just me being able to articulate what needs working on, and they can naturally see that improvement, will have a big increase on their belief system.
You mentioned that you're still developing your philosophies. Are there any other important principles that you emphasize when you're coaching players at all?
Another really good question. I'm all about like marginal gains. You hear this a lot in British cycling. I've listened to a few podcasts and read a few books on that, and I think understanding that performance is just as important, if not more important, than the outcome. Understanding, like, breaking it down. I break it down into two things, and I think this is kind of what I'm quite strong on at the moment. Is I coach the tennis player and I coach the performer. The tennis player is, how do I get the ball from A to B? Tactically, what am I looking to do? From a technical standpoint, how can we develop? That's the tennis player. That's the nitty gritty of the detail that's needed. The performer is, what's my body language like? How am I responding to adversity? How am I talking to myself? And I try and keep them quite separate, because I think the tennis player gets developed in the weeks where you have more time to work on, because it is probably a little bit more, you need a bit more headspace to be able for the player to do that. And the performer is pretty much all I talk about when we're at tournaments. I'm not going to have a massive influence on how they're going to hit a forehand when we're at tournaments, but what I can have a big influence on is how they're thinking and feeling, and how they can use that to help them ultimately win tennis matches. So I think at the moment, well, not at the moment, it has been for a number of years now, but I'm a big believer that we've got to separate the performer and the athlete. Can be in any sport. So if you're a swimmer, there's technical things that you're probably going to have to work on. But then when it comes to the race, that's done and dusted. You've got to put your belief and trust in that. And you've now got to focus on, as a performer, how am I going to be able to put myself in the best possible position to try and do the best I can in winning this race.
Wow. That's brilliant. I'm going to rob that, and I'm going to give you all the credit, because they're going to say that's not you, Orla. I wanted to ask you, aside from injury, as someone who unfortunately have gone through loads of injury, and I've seen players go through plenty of injuries, and it's unfortunately career-ending injuries for some people. apart from that, what's the biggest barrier to someone reaching their own potential or goals, whatever that might be? Is there any particular obstacles you see as patterns in young players or at any age, really?
That's a brilliant question. I think, like you kind of said it there, I think it's quite different between maybe more senior professionals and younger tennis players. I think younger tennis players, it's that gap between like expectation and reality. I think is the biggest killer for younger tennis players. I think if the gap is too big between the reality and your expectation, you're always going to feel frustrated all the time. And it almost is going to get to the point where then you're just going to stop playing and you're not going to want to play. I think that's one of the biggest things that I think really affects tennis players and their ability to achieve what they want to achieve. With 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 the more senior professionals, I honestly think it's just being able to deal with pressure moments. The players that can deal with those pressure moments is just thrive. And I think that increased the belief system, knowing that you're going to get through matches under pressure or you're going to deal with pressure, because when you're at that level, there's not much that separates not just tennis players, athletes in general. It's who can produce and execute under pressure in those key moments. So I think those are the two things that I think stop younger and more senior players reach their potential. I think that when you get to, the high end, everyone works hard. Everyone, is trying to develop. There's obviously a few people that are just absolute freaks that don't put any work in and just so happen to be unbelievable. I won't name names, but they're just incredible tennis players, and yeah, all of a sudden don't need to work hard. But I am a big believer that they get found out eventually. So yeah, I think the gap between expectation and reality for younger players, and then finding ways and different tools to be able to deal with pressure for more of the senior players.
I love the way it's different for each age. I just think that's interesting.
Yeah, and look, there's definitely a crossover. Of course, there is. Like there's going to be some professionals that maybe their expectation doesn't meet their reality, and some younger players that just really struggle to deal with pressure. I think age, it's very cliche, but age is just a number. There's tennis players that are 15, 16 that are playing professional tennis. Their journey is just accelerated. So you have to, again, it goes back to one of my strong philosophies, that you have to coach the person and not the player first. Because the person, it doesn't matter how old they are, you can't coach Alcaraz, who's 20, and then coach a 20-year-old that isn't as good, maybe, in the same way. You just can't. It's accelerated. His progression has just naturally accelerated. So it is so important that you have to coach the person first. I've given those answers because those are probably the more common traits that I see that stop players from reaching their potential. But God, if I'm coaching someone that's 16 and 25 in the world, I'm not going to be coaching someone then the exact same way that's 16 and the best in their country. It's just, so it's a little bit of a feel thing again, which I come back to a little bit.
Interesting. I wanted to ask you about upskilling as a coach, and obviously data analytics and technology have come in, but who do you learn from, Mike? Who do you look to? What resources do you use to improve yourself as a coach?
That's a really good question. For people that know me, I am massive on this. I love harsh criticism. I love being told that I'm not good at something, because it drives me to get better at something. I'm always looking to try and develop. So honestly, a bit of everything. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I try to read as much as I can. I reach out to a lot of senior coaches that I know are good at certain things. So I think coaches, like I said at the start, we have our own niche. There's certain coaches that are really good from a technical standpoint, just see the game so differently. I actually spent lockdown, the very first lockdown, speaking to lots of different people, jotting lots of things down and trying to develop myself. So I think, yeah, it's more so just reaching out to people that I know have got a lot of experience and can offer, different ways of thinking. I'm very lucky that the academy where I base myself, we've got some really good senior coaches that have worked with some very, very good players. And they've helped me as a younger coach start to kind of think about developing my philosophies and giving me some really good advice on how to spot different things. But again, it goes back to that networking element of trying to take little bits from everyone and then put my own twist on it. And because, I don't want to just take and reuse. I think it's so important that I have my own identity as a coach. But a lot of the things that I'll be saying will be things from what people have given me because I really like them. And yeah, I think from an analytics standpoint, I've worked with a few companies with like top players that have used them. I think they're great. I think they're really good. I'm very fortunate to be quite close with Mike James, who's been an analyst on the ATP WTA tour for a number of years now. Is very successful, and yeah, he's obviously spoken on a few things, and there's a few other people that I've kind of reached out to that I know, and I think analytics is great, but I do believe that it's a supplement to what a coach sees and feels again. I think it's hard to rely solely on it because I do think there's so many ebbs and flows in tennis matches that if we solely rely on stats, we then don't again see the momentum shift in matches. A stat doesn't tell me how the other person's feeling down the other end. And I'm a big believer in that's important that we kind of switch onto that as well. But I love analytics, and I think they're a massive supplement to a coach, especially when you're working at the higher level.
I want to actually get in about books and podcasts. Obviously, I hope you've been listening to this one. But any particular books or podcasts? I presume High Performance. You gave that, I think, a bit of a nod earlier. What ones would you recommend to any listeners here?
Yeah, I mean, I was actually quite lucky over the Wimbledon period. I saw High Performance live, and actually Jake Humphrey went to my high school. He's from where I'm from, so I managed to have a quick chat with him on things, and I think what they've done is incredible. They've got some amazing people on, and yeah. At the academy, we actually have a podcast called Control the Controllables. It is, I'm biased because I work at the academy, but Dan Kiernan, who is academy director, is a brilliant host, and we've actually just had Andy Murray on in our 200th episode, and there's some brilliant.
Was this the one? Sorry to interrupt. Was this the one that was sent to the coaching group, the open coaching forum?
Yeah. So we've had. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of tennis people on there, but it's more than that. It just talks. It talks kind of including the name. It's controlling the controllables. It's focusing on what you can control and how you can use that to help you develop. As a coach, as an analyst, as a player. So there's some really, really good people on there. So yeah, I've listened to a number of those. I've listened to what other ones are there? High Performance is a big one. I've listened to a lot of those. My personality type is very much, if I find a podcast, I'll listen to all of them before I even think about listening to anything else. So, and obviously, as you know, there's a lot of podcasts on the High Performance and also our one. So those are the two key ones. I think there's some episodes, like there's an Eddie Howe episode for High Performance, which I've really resonated with. Frank Lampard. From a book standpoint, I haven't read probably as many as I should, but the one that I'm reading now is actually Wim Hof, the breathing techniques. It's really interesting, a different type, different way to try and find that inner peace is probably not the right word, but finding different ways to get yourself back into the present moment, like we've spoken about. There's one that I really want to read called Legacy, which I haven't yet.
James Kerr.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I just bought it.
Yeah. So we actually where I live, we had the book, and me and my girlfriend, we were trying to find it, and we just couldn't find it anywhere. And I was getting so annoyed because I knew it was in here somewhere. And yeah, so that's one that I really want to read. I read a lot of autobiographies. I've read Johnny Wilkinson's, I've read Nadal's, I've read Stephen Gerrard. I just like reading about performance and high performance and understanding how different athletes tick and what's the common traits. Because I think as a coach, my job is to try and tap into what what is high performance for different people that I coach, because it's very different to different people. So I guess it's a little bit like the analytics. I use books as a supplement to help me get into the headspace of players that I'm trying to develop.
You obviously probably listened to Johnny Wilkinson's episode on high performance.
I have, yes.
Yeah, I've listened to it a few times, but I haven't gathered my thoughts on it. But there's two really good episodes. Susie Ma, who owns Tropical Skincare or something,
Okay.
wouldn't think of high performance, but amazing. And Mel Marshall, she's Adam Peaty's swim coach.
Oh, yeah.
The two of them really stood out. If you haven't listened to them yet, really, really good. Have you ever watched Ted Lasso?
Yeah, that is really freaky. I've literally been watching it over the last 2 weeks. So when I was in New York at the US Open, I started it, and the player that I coached, Tamara, she was like, "Oh, you need to watch it. You need to watch it." And I'm like, "Oh, all right, okay." And I'm hooked. I'm like,
it's amazing.
It's so good. Absolutely love it. Like, and what I love about it is there's so many stories within stories, like within it. Like, it's not just like, it's obviously obvious to go, it's just about football. It's about, it's funny, it's, comedy, but there's so many, like, it's very real is what I've found. Like, I think I'm very lucky that my stepdad has played a relatively big role as a doctor at Norwich City Football Club, where I'm originally from.
Okay.
And so I've been in and around the club a little bit, watching a few like the under 23s, like matches at their training ground. And so you obviously, when you go there quite a bit and, you see him doing what he's doing and the stories that he tells, you get a feel for the environment that they're in, and the struggles maybe that some players have. And I was saying the other night that it just when I watch it, it feels like I'm at home, because I can really relate to some of the feelings that these coaches, that these players have, because it's hard. There's so many emotions that I think is flying around in each episode, and for me it feels very real in a weird way, because it's obviously it's comedy based as well. But yeah, it's just really good watch.
Yeah, when you were talking about belief and confidence, you just reminded me of their sign with Believe. I was like, I have to ask them. Yeah, have you seen the dart scene yet? Have you watched that?
Yes.
I don't know if it's season 1 or season 2. That's my favourite scene. That is like the show for me. I think sometimes when there's whenever someone talks about being curious, all I think is be curious, not judgmental. It's funny. It's just kind of sat with me like.
Yeah, and the older I get and the more I coach, the more I think being curious becomes so relevant, because I find anyway, I start to judge less, because so many different people have been through so many different things and are thinking so many different things at all one time, that it's so hard for me to judge someone that doesn't just think how I think, because ultimately my job, and I've said this throughout the whole podcast, my job is to get into the psyche of the players that I coach, whether I agree with it or not, and I've got to try and find ways to tap into their personality to try and get them to develop and get better. So I think it's a really, and I think we go back to the belief sign, kind of my point on belief and confidence. That belief sign is always there. When they were losing matches in the championship, when they were winning, went on a 10-match win streak, when they then lost 5-0 to Man City, kind of represents what I'm talking about. If you believe constantly and you constantly have a belief system, good things will always happen, regardless of whether your confidence is fluctuating in and out, which it does. It's a silly example, but you can't win all the time, and you're never always going to feel great. But if you constantly believe, I'm a massive believer that good things will always happen.
I'm going to be watching all these big tournaments, and the camera will soon pan to you in the crowd, and I'll just see you say barbecue sauce. What I did want to ask actually was about your role as a coach and previously as a hitting partner, and I'm always fascinated by, and I've asked players this and coaches, but how do you determine or define success within your role? Do you have a particular standard that you like to hit, or I'm really making it too specific? What would be your definition of success, Mike, is what I'm asking you.
Definition of success. I think that it's almost, for me, giving everything that you possibly can with what you've got in the present day. I think that for me is success. And I won't go into too much detail because it's a bit private. With the player that I coach right now, we have certain things that we do which basically gives us an idea of where you're at for that day. And you've got to try and fulfill what you've told me in the morning for that day. So if you've only got, I don't know, if you're only a 1 out of 10, it's fine. Get to that one. Get to that 1 out of 10. If we planned a 3-hour session and you can only do 10 minutes, that 10 minutes has got to be to the highest possible quality that you can possibly give. And I think if you live by that, you're maximizing what you have on every single day, you know, as an athlete, because it's so like, you know, old school that we think that we can wake up every single day and give 100% all the time, you know, in every single aspect of our life. It's impossible, in my opinion. But what we can do is, in that present moment where we are right now, we can give as much as we can possibly give if we're aware of how much we can give in that moment. You know, because it's all about matching and marrying expectations. If I wake up as a coach and think my player can give a 10 out of 10, but they're saying they can only give a 4, okay, when we give a 6. So you've got to push past your barrier a little bit, but I'm not expecting you to be giving 100% for the full session. So that's how I try and define success. I think you've had a successful session, a successful year, if you've been successful tournament, if you've been able to do that consistently day in, day out.
That's actually really interesting. I follow a lot of visual kind of pages on Instagram, and they have a great one of, they go like about 6 circles in a line, and they say what people think is showing up, and it's like nearly the whole thing is full. It's like what actually is showing up. Someday it's high, someday it's low. Was that always your approach with success, or has that been molded by your coaching journey so far?
Yeah, definitely been molded for sure. I think, you know, I I've always been very driven, like even from a young kid. Like if I get something in my head, it's not a case of like, can I do it? It's a case of when I'm going to do it. It's like, I don't care how long it takes, I'm going to do it and I'm going to achieve it. And I think, yeah, like for me, it's definitely been molded from that extent to the point of, okay, I don't have to do it now straight away. I always used to be like, right, I have to get it done now. And why am I not doing it? Like, whereas now I'm like, I've still got that philosophy in the way I'm thinking, right? No, I'm going to do it. But there's going to be certain days where I can give more to that goal than maybe others for lots of different reasons. So I think the being able to understanding people, understanding the players that I coach, speaking, again, we talk about, you know, the idea of like self-development, speaking to lots of different coaches, reading lots of books and podcasts, I think allows me to understand that things don't always just happen instantly. And longevity with success is also really, really important. And what I do as well is I journal a lot. So I'll write a lot of things down. And I think sometimes we can go through certain days and weeks where we feel like we've achieved nothing. But actually, when we look back at what we've written down, oh, actually, you know what? I've achieved a lot this week. Way more than what I thought I did. So I think that also helps me understand that things don't just have to happen straight away.
You mentioned Dan Carter before. I think it was, I can't remember the interview you said it, but someone who's, I've listened to on the High Performance podcast. I was interested, he was your role model, I think. Also interesting, he doesn't play tennis, he always plays rugby. Why did you pick him? What did you admire about him?
Well, we go back to Johnny Wilkinson. So my granddad was very good friends with his granddad. And yeah, I think Johnny, I've never really had much of a chance to speak to him, but I almost felt connected with Johnny just through the fact that my granddad was good friends with, you know, his granddad and spent a lot of time with him. And I remember him getting me like a signed book of his autograph and autobiography, sorry, and everything. And that was when like I really like rugby. I really like rugby. I think it's such a, you know, such a good sport, and I love team sports as much as I love individual sports. And I think through rugby and liking Johnny, I started to then remember watching Dan Carter and I don't know, it was just, I mean, I remember watching his documentary and I just thought this guy is just the epitome of what I think high performance is. So humble, works so hard, wants to give back, and is incredibly talented at what he does through his hard work, drive, and determination. And I think for me, I really resonated with his story, and how, it was never easy. He had to face a lot of injuries through his career, and when he talks, again, I'm going to go down the bloody feel route again, but when he talks, I listen. And I think there's some really high profile athletes that when they talk, I might be listening, but am I engaged? When he talks, I listen and I'm engaged. And there's something about the things that he said that really resonate with me. And I can't necessarily put something on it, or like there's not one comment that he's made that I'm like, that was it. But yeah, I just think he's a phenomenal athlete and a phenomenal speaker, and he articulates himself really well.
Wow. I'm going to make this episode like a special like drinking game. Every time Mike says field, you take a shot.
Jesus, you'd be on the floor after about 10 minutes.
I wanted to ask you actually, looking for lighthearted or serious, don't give us any names if you don't want to, but I'm looking for your best and worst hitting practice story.
Oh my God. My best has got to be with, it's got to be with Federer. Just like, it's not even, there's not like one story, but just spending a lot of time with him over a long period at a tournament was just phenomenal for so many reasons. Again, like I've got Andy Murray was a big hero of mine, childhood hero, but I think, it's the epitome of like tennis in my generation growing up. So him and Nadal. So and then the worst one, and I've said this on a few podcasts before, I'm not going to name the player, but I'm sure in the tennis world people can have a good crack at who it might be. But I just remember getting, obviously, told that I'm going to be practicing with this guy, and I was excited. He was a relatively big name within the tennis world at the time. He's been, I think he's been top 10 in the world, won some big tournaments. And I walk on the court, and I knew from the very word go that I probably wasn't playing great. I just, for whatever reason, I just wasn't. I couldn't put anything on it. Like, just sometimes it happens, what it's like in sport. It just happens. And within 4 or 5 minutes, he just walks over my side and says, "Thank you, but see you later. I don't want to practice with you." And as how old was I? I don't know, 19, 20-year-old. This is at Wimbledon on one of the higher practice courts where all the media's watching. It was demoralizing. Like, it was like horrible. Like, just, you feel like that the world is ending because like some big name has just kicked you off the court. So that's definitely I mean, I laugh about it now because it's funny. But yeah, at the time it wasn't very funny. And you're just kind of walking back around past all the public, knowing that you've probably full well been just kicked off the court, up past the media. It was a tough 5 minutes or so. Let's put it that way. But you learn a lot from those, even though, because you realize that even though those things happen, I came straight back out and practiced with some of the best players in the world an hour later. So that wasn't my finest moment.
Well, it's all worked out, thank God. And that's great that you got. I was about to ask, how did you get over it? But having someone to go out with an hour later probably helped you just kind of.
That was, I think a lot of people have asked me that. Oh, like, how have you managed to then go in? And I said, well, actually, what I did, or, I didn't really do anything. I was just told that I'm going out again instantly. And that was how I dealt with it, as I went out and played really well with one of the best players in the world. So like, I think that was my coping mechanism. And I don't often, advise this, but my coping mechanism was just not think about it and just do it. And then once I had a few good practices, I then reflected back on it and thought, actually, no, it's not much I could have done. I wasn't giving him what he was looking for, and that was it. So
I didn't send you this question. I've only thought of it now, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on it. Something I struggle with, and I do not play an elite level of sport. It's getting too high with the highs and getting too low with the lows. Do you ever find yourself getting wrapped up in that when you're in a world stage? Does it get do you ever get...
Yeah.
Are you able to keep yourself level, or what way does it work for you?
It's so hard. I mean, I'm a competitor. I'm coaching now, but I'm still a born competitor. I mean, even a few days ago, we player that I coach was playing in at the US Open. Honestly, hundreds of thousands of people watching her. So for 3.5 hours, she's had a match point, and yeah, she ends up losing the match, and I was distraught. I was absolutely distraught. The emotions, the highs, the lows that I felt over those 3.5 hours, I was exhausted. Even now, it still hurts. So I can't obviously imagine how she's feeling. Well, I can, I can't. I've been in those types of situations, not at the US Open, but yeah, you can relate to how she's feeling. But it was just distraught. And I think I deal with it better now than I probably did. But I'm still, my emotions are, on the sideline. I'm having to not show anyone how I'm feeling, but only really show the positive side of me, and let's go, like, come on, keep working at this, and, getting up off my seat, fist pumps. Just, she really feels that good, positive energy. Inside, I'm an absolute wreck. Like, I think they just think coaches are just sitting on the side, just having a jolly in the sun on TV. No, I'm telling you, we all feel it. But in regards to players, how I coach it, I go on like arousal levels. And I think it's about finding the player's optimum arousal level. If like this is a line, you're going to obviously go high positive, low negative, low positive, low negative. It's going to be a little bit of a roller coaster, but like Federer works best when he's only tapping into low positive, low negative. Nadal works best when he's going really high positive and only low negative. Djokovic needs to go real high negative, smash a few rackets to probably get himself back into like, I've released that now. So I think, again, it's about understanding that with the arousal level, where does the player work best? Andy Murray loves being negative. We all know that. He's a negative Nelly. But that works for him. That like how he is, that works for him. He needs to express that to his box in the match in order to find himself in a place where he feels like he can compete well enough. So again, I think I try and base that question that you've asked on finding the person's right arousal level.
Again, goes back to feel. Listeners, take another shot.
Yeah, take another shot. Yeah.
This is brilliant. I'm learning so much. What I wanted to ask you as well, for anyone listening, I don't coach tennis. I coach very different sports or team sports, but for anyone listening, for generic coaches or athletes or wherever it is, what are your tips or your advice to being the best coach you can be? What, anything in particular that stands out to you that you'd love to share with the listeners?
Yeah, I mean, I hope what I've spoken about is transferable, because I do believe that it is very transferable. And I sometimes think to myself, I could feel like I could work in all sports, because just understanding the person, understanding the athlete, it doesn't matter what they do. It's, but I guess understand the person first, develop the relationship, develop trust. And I know this is probably it's one of the most things that we talk about. Listen to the athlete, because I'm telling you now, the amount of coaches that I've seen just not listen. Listen to what they have to say, give them eye contact, sit them down, give them time to express how they feel. I think is one of the most underrated coaching skills across probably all sports. If you don't listen to what their needs are, you don't listen to how they're feeling, it's impossible to help them long term. You're not going to build a relationship. So yeah, I guess that kind of comes under understanding the athlete. Find what makes them tick. It's different for everyone. Telling someone they're terrible at something can actually make them tick. You have to do it in the right way. But someone, like I said, I shared that story earlier. There was a player that I coached that if I told this person not to do something, that's what makes them tick, because they want to prove me wrong. And I'll never forget, I'll just tell this, that I did that. I wasn't traveling with her for this week, but I was still working with her. I worked with her for a long time. And I said, I knew that this made her tick. So I said to her, look, there's no way you're getting to a final in this tournament. There's no chance. You're not going to do it. Like, I'm telling you, I don't really think you're playing that well. And it was obviously said and Jeff, we were joking a little bit, but I knew it would piss her off, And a week later, she texts me. I'm speaking to her throughout the week, of course, but she goes, "You know, when we had that conversation, well, actually, I'm in the semi-finals of singles and final of doubles." So, won't tell you what she said next, but I'm sure you can. Yeah, I'm sure you can probably guess. But and that's what she gets. Gets she when she's in those tougher moments, and she remembers me. A stupid coach telling her she's shit. I probably shouldn't swear, but like she taps into. She's like, okay, I'm going to prove you wrong. So I think it's finding what your athlete, finding what makes them tick, and how are you going to get the best out of them, and that is often very different for different people.
I'm interested as well with your relationship with an athlete. Obviously, when you're going to a tournament, you might travel together, but afterwards, whether it's win or lose or out at any point, do you kind of have this period of where you just leave each other alone, you don't really contact her? Obviously, it'll depend on each athlete, but how do you balance kind of the giving them a bit of time and having your own time as well, Mike?
Yeah, so if we go like after matches, obviously, if you win a match, they're more receptive to chatting to you straight away. If you lose a match, they're not. I actually try, regardless of whether they win or lose, to give them their space for 20 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes, because I think I want to create habits. Because I think if they know that every time they win, I'm there, and then all of a sudden, every time they lose, I'm not going to be there for an hour, I think that in their head creates the perception that I'm only with them when they win. So what I try and do is for that 30 minutes after the match is finished, I'll obviously go up to them, give them a hug, say well done, whatever. I'll give them their time. Just 30 minutes, win or lose. That then creates for me the idea that regardless of what happens, you're going to get your time, but I'm always going to be there after, kind of thing. So yeah, I think it's obviously dependent on the situation, depending on how they react, what they need. That obviously I'm flexible with that, but I try and do that as much as I can. And then yeah, if it also depends on how not seriously is the wrong word, but how many weeks I'm working with them. So if maybe it might be we do 3-4 tournaments in a row and then they come back and do a practice week. It's so dependent on so many things. And again, we'll take another shot, but it's down to feel. It is just down to feel. Like there's times where after we've played a full tournament, I want to get straight back on the practice court an hour after the final because there was something I just didn't like all week. And because it's fresh in my mind and we work on it. There's sometimes when you played 4 hours on court that you need the rest, you need the recovery. So yeah, I think the one thing that I do live by from a tournament standpoint is, like I said, that 30 minutes win or lose after the match.
Are there any particular, or is there a particular criteria you look for in a player that wants to work with you that you kind of, not a checklist, maybe it's less informal than that, but are there any particular attributes you look for in those players?
Yeah, it's a great question. Again, it's down to the performer. I think it sounds obvious, but if you're not giving 100% of what you can give day in, day out, working hard, humble, respectful, all of these things to an extent, we all have our moments, we all break rackets, say things we shouldn't do, treat people we shouldn't, of course we do. But as a whole, I think, yeah, just to perform a bit, are you fully dedicated to what you're saying to me you want to achieve? Because if you are, I'll fully dedicate myself to you in developing you. If you're not, I'm not really that interested. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way of like, I'm not going to work with you, because of course I'll always facilitate someone and I'll always want to listen and understand and try and get into their psyche of what makes them tick. But I think it's really important that what I give replicates what they want to give. Because all of a sudden, if I'm giving more than them, I think that's when relationships become challenging. And likewise, if they're giving more than me, so it's about trying to find the balance of, right, what are you willing to give and can I match that, and am I willing to match that is kind of how I look at it.
Okay. Apart from watching Ted Lasso, how do you switch off? Is there anything you like to do away from tennis, or is it just 24/7?
I mean, I'm lucky that I live in Spain and I've got the beach on my doorstep, so I love going to the beach. I'm a bit of a fitness freak. I love running. I love going to the gym. It's kind of what my way of switching off. But it's hard because I've played tennis since I was 4 years old, so which is 22 years of my life, and I think sometimes my way of switching off is watching tennis. Sounds terrible, doesn't it? Sounds like, really sad, but I talk about athletes being obsessed. I am a bit obsessed. I love what I do. I adore what I do. And don't get me wrong, there's times where I need to just completely switch off from tennis, and I will, like I said, go to the beach, go on the boat, do whatever I want to do, like that's not related to tennis, but I love it. I'm obsessed with it. And not just that, the feeling of developing the high performance element, the coaching element. I don't think I'll ever get old of doing that, and just can see myself doing that for a number of years to come.
Wow. Can you watch a match and just enjoy the game, or are you always looking like what are they doing and looking for the different things?
It's a great question. Yes and no. I think again, like I said, I'm like, if someone wants me to help them achieve something, I'm all in. So if I'm watching, especially because now I'm working a little bit more at the pro level, if I'm watching someone that has maybe beaten my player a few weeks ago, I can't switch off from understanding what they did. That, how have they done that? What are they good at? How can I add those bits into my player's game? If I'm watching a match that's maybe not necessarily related to the player that I'm currently working with, I probably appreciate what's going on more. I've actually probably spent a lot more time in women's tennis than I have in men's tennis in the first few years of my career. So I think when I do watch the men, there's that little bit of switch off, because I don't feel like I have to constantly analyze what's going on, because they're not a threat to the players that I'm working with. Whereas when I'm watching women's tennis, which I watch a lot, I'm always thinking like, oh, what's she doing that maybe this player could do, and all those types of things. And I find it all fascinating. But there's sometimes, I also depends on the company. If I've got family over and we're just watching some tennis, then I can switch off. But if I'm on my own, I'm a sucker for getting a notepad and pen out and starting to write things down.
Wow, okay, right. And I'm interested as well, maybe you haven't coached enough men to give it an answer to this, but coaching men versus women, do you see a difference? Do you approach it differently? How do you balance?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I try not to see it differently. Again, I coach the person. I think that coaching the person, and again being able to tap into what they need, is regardless of whether they're a man or a woman. That's the most important thing for me. There's obviously, you look at stats and we talk about analytics, there's differences with serve speed, with physicality, with whether men generally end up trying to hit their forehand a little bit more. The women don't as much. There's obviously those elements, but we talk about the tennis player, the performer. The tennis player is different. It is different, and you have to coach probably a little bit differently from that perspective. But the performer is very, very similar. What I will say to female athletes is very similar to what I will say to male athletes, depending on the personality of the athlete I'm coaching. So there's subtle differences here and there, and I think you have to adapt the way that you work to that. And there's certain like technical and tactical things that I'll run in practices, which will probably be a little bit different depending on if it's a male or female tennis player. But in general, it's relatively similar.
Mm-hmm. I was interested when you mentioned your stepdad being involved with Norwich, and you kind of do have interest in other sports. If I could give you the key to go into any team or watch any athlete in the world for a week and just be a fly on the wall, who would it be and why?
Oh, what a question. Obviously Dan Carter would definitely be up there. Who would it be? I'm a massive football fan. And I think I have a lot of admiration for a few athletes, but I can't think of anyone that I would probably, if I got the chance to watch Messi up front, of course I would, no. But I think if I was to watch anyone, you put me on the spot here. Big time. You've really put me on the spot. I'm crumbling under the pressure.
You're not a performer, Mike, no?
I'm not a performer. No, absolutely not. I have massive admiration and would love nothing more than to spend a week with Tiger Woods.
Oh, wow. You wouldn't be the
And
only one.
yeah, and not just because of his golf. He's had a lot of negative press over the years. And I do believe that there's something about someone that's faced true adversity in the public that would be able to share really valuable life lessons. Um, so I think Tiger Woods be someone that I like golf, but I'm not like obsessed with golf. I love watching golf. I'll sometimes play a little bit of golf, but I think he would be a really interesting person to spend a week with and to kind of be on a fly on the wall and see what he does, because I've heard so many amazing stories and so many not so amazing stories about him. But that's what makes him Tiger Woods, and I think he owns that. And I think that's what I really like about those types of athletes.
Have you ever done that? Have you ever gone away to watch people just observe it at all?
No, not so much. I mean, I have, like, with conferences. I'm part of the World Tennis Conferences. I'm one of the coaches on there, and it's basically a massive platform around the world where people can listen to high performing coaches just talk and chat on different topics. I've had the chance to obviously spend a lot of time with the coaches on there, but not from a physical standpoint. Actually, go and like almost just go for my own, just pleasure to just go and watch. And I'm around it all the time. I think that's the challenging thing is I mean, I know it's only tennis. I haven't maybe dipped into other sports, but and there's a lot of transferable skills, I know. But I think when you're around the high performing kind of mindset all the time, I think, yeah, it's good to have different perspectives in different sports. But I get it so much that I think that's also, I enjoy trying to switch off from that when I can. But no, I'd love to. Tiger Woods, Michael Phelps, Michael Jordan, all of these types of athletes, I think, and not just athletes. I would argue like Alan Sugar, someone that's self-made, or anyone that's self-made, or anyone that's had success in their own industry. I would be fascinated to spend, a week and just an afternoon with them, because I think there is so many things that can transfer over in regards to different skills.
Brilliant. I'm going to unfortunately have to bring this to an
No,
end.
of
We've
course.
hit an hour and a half, but we'll have to do a part 2. We can do it live from Spain, or we can do it about Ted Lasso. I'm going to move
Absolutely.
on. I'm going to move on to the sideline 7. It's the same 7 questions at the end of every episode. Question 1, Mike, what is your favourite quote?
I'm happy you said this. I've actually got it on my arm. So I know. So it's, life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning to dance in the rain. So my dad said that to me from a very, very young age. And it just always stuck with me. And yeah, when I was a little bit older and I'm not like a massive tattoo person. I'm really not. I've always maybe wanted to have 1 or 2, but I always said to myself, right, that means so much that, yeah, I want that with me. So yeah.
Brilliant. Question 2, what's the best sporting event you've been to? And you can pick one as a fan and one involves the player, hitting partner, or coach.
Coach, Australian Open. Fan, I've seen Norwich play Middlesbrough in the playoff final at Wembley, and we won. So that would be, I always remember that. That tops it, I think, as a fan.
Brilliant. Question 3, what's been the biggest setback or challenge so far in your career, and how did you react to it?
I think just being told that, it's not necessarily one thing, but just being told you're not good enough. I think that's like, there's been a few occasions where someone's just told me, I just don't think you're good enough. And don't get me wrong, I thrive off that and I enjoy that, but it always hurts when someone says it to you. So I think, just being told you're not good enough, or you're never going to be this, or you're too young to do that. That's a common one. Yeah, you're way too young to coach at that level. I'm not going to swear on this podcast again because I've already done it, but I get a kick out of that, and I enjoy it when people say that to me, because often it shows, like we spoke about, they're not very curious. So those types of comments, they do set you back. They do. They take a bit of a hit, but I think it's how you respond to them, which is the most important thing.
Brilliant. On the flip side then, what's been your biggest achievement on or off the court so far?
Biggest achievement on or off the court? I think obviously coaching at a Grand Slam as a tennis player previous, and if anyone knows tennis well, like the pinnacle is playing. But if you can't play, coaching at a Grand Slam, coaching some of the best players in the world, hitting with some of the best players in the world. I mean, I was really lucky. I say lucky. I feel like you develop your own luck, but I warmed on Jabeur up for the final on centre court at Wimbledon this year. Unfortunately, she lost, which she reminds me of quite often when I see her. But yeah, just doing that was incredible. Again, I don't know what I can compare it to. It's like playing in a World Cup final, and playing or warming up in the stadium. You play a World Cup final, but playing at centre court, at Wimbledon. I mean, there's no way on earth at the age of 11, 12 years old that I would ever even think about doing that. And then there I was warming up someone for the final. So I'd say that's pretty cool.
Wow. That's probably the best answer I've ever gotten. No disrespect to any other person I've had on. Question 5. Looking back, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
Be patient. Be patient. There's no need to rush. I'll get to where I need to get to whenever I get there. And I think be humble, work hard. It's all I know a lot of things everyone says, I'm sure to you, but just give yourself time and understand that things will happen when they're meant to happen.
Brilliant. Question 6. Who would be your dream dinner guest and why? And you can open up the table to a few people and have a dinner party if you want, Mike.
Ooh. I feel like if I don't say my girlfriend, I might get in a bit of trouble. My dream dinner guest. Dan Carter would be there. I'm going to pick 2, and then I won't get greedy.
I'll allow it.
Yeah, Dan Carter would definitely be there, and I would also like Tiger Woods.
Yeah, class. Brilliant. Final question before I let you go. You've been so generous with your time, but I'm gonna pull you back for part 2 at some point. If your life was a book, Mike, what chapter would this be called?
Oh wow. I would say, oh God. I'm going to say it, not because of the fact that there's a podcast name after it and it's part of the academy, but Control the Controllables. I just think it's I'll be open, I can sometimes struggle to control the controllables. Frustrates me. It annoys me that I can't do something now. I said this earlier, so that's why I've had to learn to be patient. But control what you can control and let the rest kind of take care of itself.
Brilliant. I was worried at one point you'd say feel and we'd have to take another shot.
No, I thought I can't do that to anyone else. I can't do that.
Mike, this has been brilliant. If there's anyone listening that wants to get in touch or follow your journey or just keep up with what you're doing, where is the best place to do that?
So it's on my socials. I can obviously, maybe we can put the link in or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
absolutely, yeah.
I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. So we'll put it in the social instead of me having to name them all, like my different links. But yeah, any social media stream. And yeah, I've also been on quite a few podcasts. Yeah. And anyone that wants, I'm a big believer, anyone wants any advice on anything, I'm normally pretty good at getting back to people quite quickly. So yeah, anything on any advice, tennis, non-tennis, high performance. I love chatting to people about it. So more than happy to help.
Brilliant. Sounds great. I'll leave all those links, as I said, in the box, the description box of the episode. And Mike, just thanks again. I really enjoyed this. I learned a lot. I have a full page of notes here beside me, and best of luck. And I'm sure hopefully we'll catch up again soon.
No, it was a pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
A big thank you to Mike for joining me on today's podcast. I thoroughly enjoyed our chat and I hope you got something from it. I'm looking forward to keeping in touch and hopefully getting over to visit the Soto Tennis Academy in Spain. If you are enjoying the episodes, please do leave a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as it does help the show grow. You can follow all of our social media to keep up to date with the latest episodes and order content, and be sure to send in your suggestions. As always, thank you for listening.